Welcome to the Skydance Mountain Author Spotlight, an arm of Authors on the Mountain, the show for creatives of all types, authors, writers, poets, musicians, artists, dancers, and craftsmen. All those who draw inspiration from creativity and from being creative. If you are an author or creator looking for motivation and innovative inspiration, this show is for you. As Stephen Pressfield says, creative work is a gift to the world and every being in it. Don't cheat us of your contribution. Give us what you've got. And to that we say, Amen. This is Brett, founder and creative director at Skydance Mountain. So glad you're here today. Let's get creative. Today, we meet with author Lisa Whalen and voiceover actress Amanda Lamb with a warm and heartfelt conversation about the process of their creative collaboration as author and narrator for the audiobook production of Lisa's beautiful book, Stable Weight, a Memoir of Hunger, Horses, and Hope. Let's welcome Lisa and Amanda to the Skydance Mountain Author Spotlight. And come on in. It's so good to finally be back here with you guys, Lisa Whalen, Amanda Lamb, and we're going to have a conversation right here on Authors on the Mountain, kind of a special edition of a conversation with an author and her narrator. And I think this we just a disclosure to folks watching and listening. We tried this about a week ago, had some technological problems, and I think it was meant to be because we had a wonderful conversation anyway and just got to know each other. So I feel like you guys are actual good friends now. I know you much better, and I just appreciate you meeting back here. Welcome, both of you.
Yeah, I feel the same. It's great to be here, and thank you for your patience with the technical difficulties.
Oh, any day it could be any one of us here. So thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Amanda. Welcome to you too.
No, thanks so much for having me. This is so great.
That's great. It was fun it was good to put a face to your voice because I had been listening to your voice and had never seen your face, and it matches your beautiful silky golden voice, the lady with the golden voice.
Thanks.
And I'm just thrilled to be here now. So the way we met, let me back up a little bit. I met Lisa. Actually, I ran into Lisa on a podcast that I had been watching. It was with the Carly Cade Equestrian Author Spotlight, and she interviews authors who are also into horses and entrepreneurs and engages with them just so skillfully. And there's a quote that they had said about Carly. She instantly turns strangers into friends. And that's kind of how it's led into this continued friendship and conversation now with you guys too. I had met her through an author we had done a couple audiobooks for, Margie Evans, who has been on her podcast several times. But as I was watching Margie, I thought, this is great. Carly's got an amazing style. Let me see who else she's got. And I went clipping through and I came across Lisa. Lisa, you were an amazing interview. And when I heard about your book and realized that, I'm going to hold it up right now, Stable Weight, a Memoir of Horses, Hunger, and Hope, I thought, I wonder if she has an audiobook. You know, to a carpenter with a hammer, everything's a nail. I'm going to call and find out. I'm going to find out if she's got an audiobook. And lo and behold, you didn't, which was amazing and great for me. And we had a conversation. You said, let me think about it. And not long after that, you got back in touch with me. So just a miracle happened, and we got together. And then I had been looking for just the right narrator, and lo and behold, this Carly Cade lady again came to our rescue, because she has been with her books, she has been using an amazing narrator, and it turns out it was Amanda Lamb, who, you know, you're reading out of Carly's books. There were some steamy, romance novel stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, yeah, no. But it's amazing how diverse you are, Amanda, and how just perfect you were for this project. Did you feel the same way, Lisa? What were your thoughts?
I did. I had actually, and I'm so grateful we all met up the way that we did. It feels very fate bound somehow, I think. But I was so grateful that you had suggested Amanda, because when we decided we were going to work together for the audiobook, I had gone through Skydance Mountain's site and listened to all of the female narrators that are on there. And there was one that I liked quite a bit, and I was going to suggest her. But then you had suggested Amanda and sent me an excerpt of her reading another book. And as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, yes, that's it. That she's it. She's the other narrator was great too, but I just knew it as soon as I heard Amanda. I thought, no, she's exactly what I had in mind for this project. I think she's a perfect fit, and I think it worked out exactly as a perfect fit. I was thrilled when I got the prologue and first heard her reading my book.
It was magic. Yes.
You guys are
Amanda,
so
do you remember when I'm trying to remember how I reached out to you. Do you remember what your thoughts were when you first got the book and
I know.
saw a sample?
I loved it. So I have been working with Carly for years on her In the Rain series in particular, and love doing fiction books. I read fiction romance books myself, so I love them. And that's kind of been, where my audiobook journey has been. And so getting just even only the prologue, which is all I saw initially, not even the whole book, the first little paragraph had me so hooked, and I loved the pacing of it. I immediately felt connected to it and just thought, I know exactly how this should sound. And it felt so good to just immediately have a flow that is really hard to get into sometimes. And I could have read the entire book in one sitting out loud. I could have done, had I been able to just do it, I could have just done it. I just absolutely loved it from the second I read the prologue.
Amazing, because I heard back from Lisa after she heard you reading parts of it. How did you feel, Lisa, when you heard Amanda's voice?
Yeah, well, when I got the prologue, I think I was telling my sister afterward, I said, I can picture exactly where I was in my house. I can remember what I was wearing and everything because it's so crystal clear. I heard that prologue when Amanda started reading, and I just got chills all up and down my arms because not only because she was such a great fit, but it was such a eerie experience in the coolest way possible to hear these thoughts that I'd had at the time, but then also had worked and reworked as I was writing, that were all only inside my brain until they were in the book, come
Yeah.
out of someone else's mouth. Hear my thoughts, my words, my impressions, and to hear about these places and people that I knew so well described by someone else. It was just a really cool experience. It was almost like I got to see my life through someone else's eyes. Which was just it was a neat experience. And as a writer, it was really valuable too to hear my work from someone else and just to see how what I put on the page and what I intended came across to someone else who was completely new to it. So that was really valuable. I feel like I have all these little nuggets tucked away for the next writing project I do. Uh, just little nuggets of learning and value that I got from that I want to apply the next time I work on a book.
Yes, beautiful. And putting the two of you together, seeing it all from a producer's perspective, it comes across as a world-class project to me. I'm serious about that. It's a perfect marriage, a perfect union, and it shows. I love how it's a model or an example of how we all, when we work together, it's just exactly as it was meant to be, right? It was just perfect. So that for those who don't know you, Lisa, or the book, can you give us a little bit of background about you, about your background, and also Stable Weight, what led you to write this book?
Yeah, so I live in Minnesota. I'm a teacher primarily. I teach at a community college. I teach English classes in journalism and literature and composition and a few others, among American literature, a few other courses. And that's my full-time gig.
Mhm.
And then I started writing. I think I've always written as a way to figure things out and process things. It's really how I think. Getting things on the page is how I think and how I process things, especially if they're emotional or difficult, or I'm not sure how I think or what I feel about something. And I was never very confident about my writing. I did go to a graduate program in creative and critical writing, and I loved it, and I learned so much. But I still was very not confident about my writing, and so I started very slowly because my background was in academia, once I got into teaching, I was actually directing a writing center initially. So I was helping students and tutoring students on their papers and their writing projects in school, and then training other tutors to do that same work. Um, I started by doing academic writing and just publishing articles on research or teaching or pedagogy, theories of how to teach and train tutors. And that built up my confidence a little bit, enough that I could get into creative writing. So the book Stable Weight is my first attempt at a book length project. I had done some personal essay and memoir essay and had those published first. And it really began, I guess the first inklings of it began in therapy, believe it or not. So I had, beginning at age 15, I had a pretty kind of a emotionally traumatic experience in a relationship. And at the same time, I had this burgeoning eating disorder that had begun. And the stress and the need, the threat of not surviving that my body was feeling physically at the time heightened the emotional trauma of that relationship experience and vice versa. And so I just felt like I got sort of stuck in this place at age 15 or 16, and I never fully processed it and got past it. And the eating disorder persisted. It sort of came and went in terms of severity and form and shape for at least a decade, while I was trying to figure out who I was and my career. And I moved out of state from where I grew up. And so my therapist in the eating disorder program was actually the one who told me to just start writing about things as a way to figure them out and feel better. And I showed them to her. She was the first person to ever see really any of my writing. And then I left it for a long time. But horses were actually what brought me back to writing and got me to publish and put this book together. On a whim, I decided one summer, as a early 30 something, to take a few horseback riding lessons. I thought just for fun over the summer, and because a friend of mine was a lifelong horse owner and rider, and she had invited me to come riding with her. And I figured out pretty early, I think my second lesson, that something really powerful and magical was happening when I interacted with these horses, even on the ground before I got in the saddle. And it was somehow um, accessing some of that stuff that I had never processed from my eating disorder. And it was putting me in my body and having me appreciate my body in new and different ways that I never had before. And so I started writing about the riding lessons. And then from there, it really just took off. And so the book is about how learning to interact with horses really helped me recover from this eating disorder and this experience that I had, and how it also made me a better teacher and just, I feel like, a better, more rounded human being. So each chapter is named after a horse and the life lesson or the gift that that horse gave me.
Wow. Melissa, my wife, and I know people very closely in our lives that are dealing and struggling with eating disorders, and it's a very prominent. The more you talk to people, the more you realize there's lots of that going on right now. So I felt like it was um, it was a necessary, but also a poignant book for people right now. Not only those who like horses. I think I love the way you just so beautifully intertwined the horses into the story, because you could have chosen anything, but you did choose the horses. And because we have horses and they are a big part of our lives, and we realize how the human horse relationship really helps us grow and experience things that we might not have been able to do in a human experience as well. It's kind of, in a way, it's a safe measure. I love that. Are you still riding right now?
I am. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
write about once a week.
Yeah, yeah. I want to turn this to Amanda, but before I do, Amanda, I would like to share a part of the audiobook, if you don't mind me, just so that people can
Please do.
kind of get a little
Sure.
a little flavor of this. And I have to say this again. Melissa and I told you this last time we talked, loved your voice so much that we actually have listened to it before going to bed or while falling asleep. It's one of those, it's not a droney voice, just so people know. And you'll hear in just a minute. It's a very calming, soothing, easy to listen to, relaxing voice, which I think is wonderful too. You have a healing quality to it. Honest to goodness, it's a beautiful. So listen up here, folks, and this is just a little a short segment from chapter 6.
Get into a comfortable position, she coached. I sat in lotus position and savored my yoga mat's cool and tacky surface against my calves. But my mind jumped like a spider, from lesson plans for tomorrow's classes to the Amigos' nearly empty gas tank to plants in need of water at home. Imagine roots sprouting from your seat bones to ground you to the earth's core. Imagine a thread at the crown of your head, lengthening your spine into outer space. I filled with details the scene she sketched: an outdoor setting, a journey, a dwelling, a stranger, a message I needed to hear. The air is damp and smells of wet leaves. Sequoias disappear into low clouds. Fog mutes everything but wings flapping in the distance as a flock takes leave me to a cottage.
Sorry about that. That to me was so poetic. Lisa, your writing is just so depthy, so rich with visuals for me. And Amanda, you took those visuals and put them into audio, and I just loved. Again, I have to say that was the perfect marriage of voice, narration, heart, and writing. So that was beautiful. I'd love to know, how did you get into narrating? What was your background on that?
It's a very weird.
Maybe I should back
Long
up.
story.
What is, yeah, give us the whole.
I know.
Your
I'll make it as
experience
brief as
before
possible
that.
for everybody's benefit, lest I do become droney. No, I have a background in theater and performance, and I studied it in school, but ultimately I got a degree in accounting. So further into a CPA license. So I am by day an accountant who was a performer many moons ago. And it's how I met my husband. We both, were in theater together, and my dad was in radio growing up. I did some little commercials with him here and there. I always loved it. I always loved reading. Anytime, when you're in school early days and teachers are calling on you to read little bits of, the history textbook or whatever, I loved being called on. And I was a very shy child, so that didn't make any sense to me, but I loved reading aloud. And it's funny you say that you really process things in writing, Lisa, because I process things verbally. So for me, that it's so funny how that kind of connects, right? And I think that maybe why this feels like a good match, but I think maybe that helps me connect even better with the text to read it and hear it out aloud. So I've always loved it. And I had this pipe dream to be the one moment, please, lady, which is funny now in the times of Siri and Alexa. And it's kind of a funny thought. But I had, I'm also a very pragmatic person and a very logical person. So I knew that I was, taking out student loans to be in school. And I thought one day I need to pay them back. I should do something where I can, have a job. So I went into accounting, which I do really love. It's the complete antithesis of performing. It's, completely objective as opposed to subjective. And there was so much solace in that. Obviously, with performing, you really open yourself up to a lot of criticism. But you know what? 1 + 1 is always 2.
That's right.
It was just this really kind of beautiful swap. And I liked the stability of it, and I still do. So I had just kind of let that part of myself go for a period of time. And then very randomly, as things do, when things are meant for you, they do not pass you by. I firmly believe. I was working for a green energy company at the time in the accounting department. And there was this entire department of women in marketing, and they were just wonderful, outgoing, beautiful women who I didn't know very well. I knew to say like hi in the bathroom to them, but they seemed lovely, And one day, just honestly out of nowhere, I'm sitting booking some journal entries, and one of these marketing gals comes up and says, we're doing these ads, and we've got this one person doing them. He keeps saying the word electricity. We just need a different voice. And we want it to be a woman. And I was like, that sounds good. And she goes, for some reason, I just think you'd be good at it. I don't know. And I was like, that's very very random way to come back into this. And from there, I kind of like read for them. It snowballed into doing some ads, which ultimately led me to meeting Carly. She worked for a different branch of the same parent company. And we met in a very, again, fateful way. And we're spending time together. She got to hear a video voiceover I did for a video. And she was telling me about this book she was writing. As I am very much a reader in the romance genre, I was like, you tell me when this is ready for me to read. I would love to read it. I was like, and
Wow.
when you want an audiobook, it's been a dream of mine. Just let me know. And years later, she reached out and she said, yeah, I do. I want to do an audiobook. You want to
Wow.
try it? And so I had done in this time period, just every job I've been at has somehow led me to do voiceover work, be it an ad or little things here and there, little trainings, outgoing voicemail messages. It just kind of tends to pop up, whether I'm
Yeah.
looking for it or not. And I just kind of lean in when it does. And so when she called me up and said, it's time, I want to do this book, I was like, okay, I don't know I've never done this. And she's like, let's do it anyway. And so we did. And
Amazing.
she is, I mean, I think we can all agree Carly is just like an absolute beautifully rare bird
Yes.
who is the most supportive human being on the planet. I don't think
Amen.
I've
I
ever
totally
worked with
agree.
someone like her before. She's just so fantastic. And her books are fantastic too. Small plug
Yes.
for her. But it was really lovely working through those. And she's still writing them. I'm still recording them. And that's
Great.
been so fun. It's kind of parlayed its way just into other work here and there.
Right. Right.
And as I continue, I just kind of continue leaning into it and continue taking it. You know, it's something I hope eventually to do full time. But in the
Right.
meantime, it's just been kind of a wonderful way to be creative and still have that performer aspect to an otherwise, accounting career.
Oh, when you described that, I pictured Superman jumping into, with his
Yeah.
Clark Kent jumping into a telephone booth. Well, here's Amanda jumping into a recording studio, and she's super voice. Right?
A
You
mic
take off
booth.
your
Yeah.
CPA, take off your CPA cloak, and there you are.
Right.
Oh, that's so good. What is the hardest part about doing voiceover work?
Probably it's very, it's the part I love the best, and it's also the hardest as well. It's very insular while you're
Hmm.
doing it. So,
Yes.
I mean, for
Yeah.
the most part, unless you're in a studio, which, I mean, I've done ads and stuff in studios, but with kind of directors and production people helping you there. But when you're doing a book, you're just by yourself. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you're doing it, I mean, if there's any room for self-doubt, it creeps right in. And
Right.
you just think, like, I don't know if this is any good. This could be
Yeah.
terrible. Like the number of voices I did for Carly alone, a good portion of her books are from the male perspective. I don't know
Wow.
if that's any good. So it definitely a lot of self-doubt, a lot of things like that. But ultimately, once you kind of get into a flow, you just kind of roll with it. And
Yeah.
I'm relying on her to tell me no, it's
Yes.
no
Yes.
good. Relying on Lisa to say, do this
Uh-huh.
one again, which is great. I love
Yeah.
direction. So that's probably the only thing I miss is just like having someone to kind of tell you what to do a little.
An in-person director. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a
Well,
little bit.
you sure handled that well. I don't remember having to do a whole lot of. Lisa, did we have to give many I don't think we did any, did we?
No, there were very few. I would get the chapter and I would listen to it and I would think, I hope they're not thinking I'm just blowing this off and not taking it seriously,
Yeah.
because I would write back and say, oh, there was maybe this little name that needs to be pronounced differently. But I really didn't have a lot of feedback because Amanda just seemed to get it right away. And
So kind. Yeah.
I would get the chapter and listen to it and think, yeah, that's it. I really don't have a whole lot to say about it. But I was
Right.
just going to comment on what Amanda said. That's so relatable for writers too, that
Yeah.
idea that it's very insular, it's very solitary most of the time.
Mhm.
And those self-doubts are right there with you as a writer too. There are times where I think, I don't want someone to sit there and watch me write, but I wish there was somewhere where
Right.
I could lean over and go, what
Yeah.
do I keep this? Do I chuck it? Am I wasting my time going in this direction? And I did have some readers who were wonderful at giving me feedback, but I don't do that till I get to a certain point. And at that point, you're very invested. And like you said, it's very personal. You're putting yourself out there. So it feels a little riskier. So
Yeah.
that piece, the narrative piece and the writing piece are so similar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. I love that I'm relying on someone else's words, to be honest, because I mean, you definitely have the harder job. Let's be honest, you're staring at a blank page and creating something. And then I just get the absolute joy of voicing it, which is the fun part. So
Yes.
like, I mean, I can't complain too much. It's a really fun job when I get to do it.
Yeah. Everybody has their gifts. And if you're thriving in your gift, you're going to be doing your best. And that's what what I loved about this project is the whole working together. You guys just were amazing, are amazing. I wanted to know also, Lisa, well, let me back up. Audiobooks are way different than a reading book, obviously. It's been said, and I'm finding it's true. There's a lot of people, a lot more people now, thanks to these iPhones and the internet. A lot more people are listening that maybe wouldn't have read at all. Are you finding, Lisa and Amanda, are you finding that to be true? Are you hearing from anybody that maybe hadn't read your book but listened to it? Just a
Yeah.
question.
And I think what surprised me even more than that were the number of people who had read the book and said, "Oh, I'm so excited there's an audiobook. I'm going to listen to it." And I thought,
Oh,
"Wow, really?" Like I was shocked at how many people wanted to hear it after they had already read it.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great. But the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I'm sort of a latecomer to listening to audiobooks, but once I got into them, I absolutely love it. And now I always have one going when I'm doing something else, unless I'm, working or writing myself. And
same.
I kind of want to, I have this idea. I want to write an article about it, that as a writer, I learn so much, and there's so many different things that I learn listening to other writers that I didn't ever learn on the page. It's just a
Hmm.
whole different experience. And I'll be listening to a book, a novel or something, and think, oh, that's how you show what this character is thinking without saying she was thinking this, or I just pick up these little things listening to audiobooks that I didn't reading the print. And so I really appreciate how it's a different experience reading it on the page versus hearing it. And I think both are valuable and both teach different things. And like I said, I'd love to do an article, or I've been thinking about maybe doing some kind of a conference presentation on using audiobooks in writing classes, because I think they can be so valuable.
Wow.
There's something about the way they free up your mind. And I think for kinesthetic learners who learn better when their body's in motion, I think uh, there could be something really powerful about
Mm,
that too.
I
that
agree.
is amazing. Yeah. Go ahead, Amanda.
No, I agree. I know a number of people who have a lot of like ADHD, like, you know what I mean, tendencies or full
Yes.
diagnosis. And for them, reading may be very challenging, like sitting down, taking that time, focusing on a book. But if they're doing other things, they get to experience those stories. And that's the way that they read. That's the way they experience any written
Beautiful.
work. And I think that that's wonderful. Much like you, I always have one going. I'm always reading something on my Kindle, and then I've always got a different audiobook happening.
Yeah.
But so often the audiobooks I listen to are ones that I have read. I get a different experience out of them. And I also am, I think, a little bit less stressed about missing pieces. So you
Yes.
turn on a vacuum, it gets a little, you might miss a second. It doesn't matter. You kind of know where it's going,
Yeah.
which I like. But there's also something to it. I can see what you mean by like teaching writing, and even in techniques, because there's certain things that don't really come across when you're reading them, but you notice them when you hear them. So if you're really repetitive with a particular phrase,
Hmm.
it sticks with you when you hear it, and you go, oh no, I'm relying too much maybe on this one phrasing or this. And I think that that's kind of a really valuable thing. I've learned that a lot while reading, even just like short snippets, ads, things like that. We're like, oh, we've already used that word a couple times. Like
Right.
you almost
Right.
don't see it, but you hear it.
Yeah, I've had that experience as a narrator, doing voiceover for other people, and coming
Mhm.
across things in their book and you actually find the typos. I've heard editors and authors say,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, you should read your own book out loud, whether it's just into your phone or whatever, and listen back. And because when you do, that's when you catch your typos, right? And all or
Yeah.
like you
Forces you to
said.
slow down too a little bit when you're reading it
Yes.
out loud. You
Yeah.
have to slow down, and you really kind of notice where, oh, you picked up a wrong verb tense, or oh, you,
Uh-huh.
you did something kind of weird there.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
I do the same thing. I think it's a
Yes,
really valuable tool.
it
Yeah.
is. Go ahead, Lisa.
Oh, I was just going to add to that. I think I agree with everything you've said. And I think sometimes having someone else read your work is even more valuable, because I
Mm,
noticed when I was reading my book out loud as I was revising and editing it, I would read something the way I meant it to be on the page. And then I
Mhm.
would, I actually had, I had just had the mechanical word voice that was in Microsoft Word read it back to me. And I'm a fairly good proofreader. I've always liked to proofread, and I tend to catch a lot of stuff in other people's work. But
Same.
when I had the mechanical voice reading back to me my own work, I was like, holy cow, I can't believe how many places I missed a the, or I had two ands, or I missed a repeated phrase, or and the other thing that it was really helpful for was, when it's your story, you're invested in all of it. And so when I was revising, there was something about hearing it where I was like, oh God, even I'm getting bored here. So if I'm bored and it's my story, then readers are going to get bored, right? Like I got to cut this section, or I have to really significantly, um, shrink it down and make it more succinct, or this is such a veering off the track diatribe, this needs to go, that I didn't catch the million times I read it on the page. And so it was really valuable to have that experience of going, yeah, I'm getting bored here. And if I'm bored, then other readers are certainly going to be bored. And then it made it easier to cut, as they say, kill your darlings, to
Yes.
cut
Yeah.
sections that I'd worked so hard on, or that I liked on the page, but just didn't work in the book.
Boy, both,
Right.
yeah, really good points. Also, Lisa, you had mentioned, that something about listening, or I can't remember exactly the way you said it, about movement. And when we're walking or doing, like you said, vacuuming, Amanda, or doing any type of movement, it's that bilateral movement really gets us thinking. I've heard that conversations or ideas come much more fluidly when we're moving, and movement is so important nowadays. So that's another. It's kind of hard to read and walk at the same time, unless you're on the treadmill. Maybe people do that too, which is good.
Ill-advised.
Sounds like the voice of
Stick
experience
with the
there.
audiobook.
Yeah, thank goodness for that. Yeah, it's a good time to be alive. So yeah, just good for health purposes, good for brain purposes, and good for your spirit and soul as well. Because when you're listening to a heartfelt, again, I have to say, Amanda, you brought it to life through heartfelt moments. There's the whole gamut of emotions in this. Were you affected at all by that, or was it hard for you to get into those?
God. No, I connected so deeply to the text. Like it was just so, it was so beautifully written, Lisa. Like I love your story. And it's so, obviously it was different for me because I'm used to reading fiction. That's been primarily what I've done. So this was the first memoir. And so I can imagine it would have been very hard not to be too precious because it's your story. How are you not going to be too precious with it? But you weren't. I think it was beautifully done. It was beautifully edited. I love the way you pulled it all together. It just, your style of writing in general is so reflective of how I even think or tell stories in day-to-day life with it, making a point here and then, but this story you have to come in here, and it only matters if you understand the point I'm trying to make over here. The way that all comes together in this is so wonderful. I took so much away from your experience as a highly sensitive person. Um, and I was reading back a little bit, and the mention of the antenna, and that I remember reading that and being like, oh, it hit me. Like we probably all have that to some degree. I would not qualify as a highly sensitive person, but I know people who are. And it
Yeah.
was such a beautiful, one of my very dear friends is, and it was such a beautiful way for me to kind of reflect on her and how my experiences with her and how like tender we all should just be, and careful we should all just be with our words and our actions, and how different people will absorb those. And
Yes.
I just, the care we need to take of the people around us is so important. And I just really, I love that aspect of the story. I love the way, I don't know, you learned from all of your experiences. It's really inspirational because so many of
Yes.
us can kind of go through and have these experiences with horses and not even really take a moment to say, oh, this correlates to this one thing I've been trying to figure out. And you just did that so beautifully. So I think there's so much to the story. It affected how I parent my children. Like,
Oh,
there's just so much to it that was so wonderful.
Amen.
oh, thank you.
Genuinely loved it.
That's so nice to hear. Thank you, especially what you said about parenting. I so appreciate what you said about you have to understand this before you understand that, and connecting, because one of the things I worried about most with this book was that readers would get frustrated with the nonlinear format. There are portions of it that are linear and chronological, but and I tried to force it, and it was a good lesson for trust your intuition, right? Because
Mhm.
I tried forcing it and I tried a chronological approach, and it just didn't work because I'm not my brain just does not work in a very chronological, linear way. I can be linear when I need to be at work or when I'm teaching, but I think when it comes to life and my identity and the big picture kind of things, my brain just it's more circular, and it keeps coming back and coming back and coming back until I understand it. And it's always looking for connections. And I'm always thinking, oh, but I don't really understand that, or my readers won't understand that unless they get this piece first. And so that structure, I was just really worried. I didn't want readers to get frustrated and quit. Um,
Oh, it was
but I just
beautiful.
had to stick
Mm.
to the way my brain works. There was no other way to write it except the way my brain could do it. So
I don't think you're alone in that. Like, I think genuinely, and if we're not seeing our lives as these like cyclical things, we're missing it. Like, we're
Yeah.
missing the point of our
Yeah.
experiences. And so it was
Absolutely.
just kind of a good lesson in that too. Like, where am I not connecting the dots that I should be? Like, what are the lessons that I've missed by not, if I'm not thinking that way? And so I took it. I mean, I think that way a lot too. Like, telling stories is,
Yes.
sometimes it's not just A to B, right? Sometimes it's, you take the circular route, you take the
That's
long route.
right.
But I think it was just really well done and really well executed.
Wow, so well said, Amanda. That I'm glad you mentioned that antenna, because horses are sensitive too, and that was the
Yeah.
whole point here. What I loved, probably the big surprise for me, Lisa, you said that's the way you think. You've got a beautiful brain. I wish more people would think this way.
Yeah.
We don't all have to think the same way, but to be sensitive and open to growth, to how can I become the best version of myself. And what I wanted to say about your writing is that it is so skillfully done. And the big surprise for me was the fact that you were able to tell your story. It was a memoir. Again, an author who may not have been known at this point, not one of those New York Times that everybody goes, oh, I want to hear their life story. So you would think that, well, I might just skim over some of this. No, it was edge of your seat kind of stuff. I think of BC and AC. I think of your first love, and you want to know how this story goes. And you did some amazing foreshadowing. And then the next thing you know, um, you're on to something else. Like, whoa, 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 whoa. It's just like a Netflix series. As you went to a
Yeah.
commercial, but it wasn't really a commercial. And that, like I said, it was skillfully done. It's so that you can't put the book down until you've read it.
Mhm.
And it is, I highly recommend it, not just for people with eating disorders, but people who want to just learn to be a better version of themselves as
Yeah.
well.
oh,
Beautifully
thank
done.
you. That's so nice to hear. Thank you. That really means a lot. And I feel fortunate that things that I used to think of as some of the worst experiences of my life have produced things that now I'm just so grateful for, and that I get to enjoy, just having conversations like this and talking to people about their experiences. It's been amazing how many people that I've worked with for 10 years at the college who I never would have thought would be interested in my book, read it and wrote me an email and said, "Wow, I related to this and this and this." And that's been so gratifying. And I've learned things about people that I don't think they ever would have shared, that I never would have known. And that's made me appreciate them in new ways as a human being. It can be easy with colleagues at work to just see them as very one dimensional because you only work with them or communicate with them about mostly that one thing. And so that's been a really wonderful surprise since the book has come out too, that I've gotten to know people better and that they've shared things and been more vulnerable with me than I think they ever would have. And I've loved that piece of it.
Mm, yeah, that is so beautiful. So curious for both of you, what's next? Amanda, what's next for you? What are you working on, and where are you heading?
Right now, I think right now things are slow, and that's good.
Good. Boy.
Enjoying summer with the children. So right now, I'm not working on an active project. Open to active projects, so you let me
Yes.
know.
Uh-huh.
There's
Things won't be slow for long for you. I'm gonna promise you that.
things pick up when they do. I just take them as they come. I know Carly is still working through her most recent book, Beyond 8 Seconds. That's the most recent one I
Mm,
recorded for her, that I don't think it's out yet, but it's still in like review and that whole process.
yeah.
So that's the next one that'll be coming out that I will have narrated.
Wonderful.
But otherwise, I'm just looking forward to my next project whenever it comes back up.
Oh, that's great. It's so refreshing to hear somebody say nowadays, things are slow and I'm just enjoying time at home with the kids.
Yeah, it's great.
That's healthy. That is healthy. And I
Yeah.
love that. That's the way
We
it
don't do
should
the
be.
hustle mentality over here.
No.
I'm no.
Oh, I
No,
know.
that's
Because usually people say, oh, it's crazy. It's been so crazy busy. Can't wait till it slows down. So beautiful.
it's a beautiful period. Yeah,
but
we're
I
going to
did
just enjoy this rest.
good. And I don't want to ruin that rest by giving you more work, but I promise you,
No.
you're getting more work from Skydance Mountain coming your way.
Yes,
For sure.
it's good. It's recovery, and then I'll
Good.
be very ready when the next one comes. So
Yay. Okay. Well, wonderful. How about you, Lisa? What's going on and what's next for Lisa?
Well, I have some outlines and some very, very, very rough portions written. I'd like to do another book, and I have some ideas what I think the core piece of it will be about, but it's still the way I write. It starts out as a bunch of like vaguely connected pieces that I don't understand how they're connected, and so I write it in all these segments, and it seems like a big mess that's never going to come together, and then somehow it does. So that's sort of sitting aside. I took a little bit of a break from it, but I really want to get back to it. I have in a few weeks, I'm actually going to be back in the physical classroom for the first time in 3.5 years, which is a little
wow.
daunting. It's going to be like
Wow.
starting over as a new teacher.
Cool.
And I just found out that one of the classes I was scheduled to teach that I'd already prepped had low enrollment and got canceled. So I'm going to be teaching a brand new class for the first time that I've never taught. So I am frantically prepping that. And I was a little intimidated by it, but once I got into it, I'm actually having so much fun. I have so many ideas. Now I have to start pulling back and going, no, you'll hate yourself and the students will hate you if you try to do all of that. So that's been really fun too, because it's introduced me to some new texts and new writers and thinking about them in new ways that I think is going to help re-spark some creativity that's been in sort of a low point since the book. It was such a intense process writing and revising the book and then working to get it out into the world that I took a little time, and now I'm starting to feel that desire to write and that voice coming back, which is really fun.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah, I hear farmers talk about letting the land lie fallow for a little bit and then coming back and it's rich and full again, full crops. Both of you, this has been such a fun and enriching and refreshing experience for me, getting to know you both better, getting to talk about. There's something about this collaboration and the synergy that happens when you all work together and these thoughts and ideas, sparks flying. So it's got me thinking of how we can make Skydance Mountain audiobooks better as well, and how I can come alongside you authors and you voice over actors and actresses and help make it even a better project by the end of the project. So thank you guys for taking your time to meet here. I hope down the road we get to have another one of these kind of conversations and see where. I can't wait to see where life's going to take all of us next. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this. This was such a wonderful conversation. I've enjoyed it. And I'm so glad I got to see Amanda face to face after hearing her voice. So that was a really nice experience too.
Me too. Thank you,
Thanks.
Zoom.
I know. This was so great. I mean, I read all your words. I had the benefit of a few pictures, but this is so much better.
Yes, yeah. I'm going to leave all the things we talked about, including Carly's website and all that, in the show notes as well. Make sure that people know how to reach Stable Weight. And you, Lisa, actually go ahead while we're here. Amanda, how do people reach out to you if they want to get you for narration? And also you, Lisa.
Yeah, you can find me at amandalamvo.com, and there's a little contact page there.
Beautiful.
Still under construction. Obviously, it's just mostly landing at this point, but
okay, great.
It'll reach me.
We'll put that in the show notes too. And you, Lisa?
Yeah, I have a website. It's Lisa Whalen Author. It's a Wix site. So if you just search that, the URL is a little odd, but if you just search that, you can find it really easily, or you can always find me at North Hennepin Community College in Minnesota as well on their website.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both. Beautiful hearts, beautiful souls, great at what you do. I feel blessed to have been here today. We will see you next time. Blessings to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye. Well, this wraps up today's show with author Lisa Whalen and voiceover actress Amanda Lamb. We hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Thank you for being here today at the Skydance Mountain Author Spotlight Podcast, the show for creators across the globe, where we encourage you to get off your duff and create great stuff. We'll see you back here soon.